Hello, everyone. I'm Selena Hill, and this is the new norm on Black Enterprise. Today, I have the pleasure to speak with best-selling author, renowned speaker, media personality, and businesswoman, Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts, who also happens to be the daughter of legendary TD Jakes. I'm super, super happy to have you here with us today, Sarah.
I'm so excited to be here. Like I said earlier, I've seen your work, so I know that this is going to be a good time.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that so much, sis. So, you have your fifth book out, Woman Evolve, Break Up with Your Fears and Revolutionize Your Life, which borrows insight from the story of Eve to show how women can harness disappointments and mistakes to really transform their lives. So, let's start with the book and your inspiration behind it.
Any woman who has ever had a cramp, who has ever had childbirth, who has ever experienced anything that we say, the pains of being a woman, usually blames it on Eve. You don't even have to be a Bible scholar to have dragged Eve from messing up in the garden. And I was very much so like that until I had this moment where I was studying and I started seeing Eve differently. I started seeing her on a woman in a world that was maybe bigger than her, who was ultimately trying to recover from a mistake. And I couldn't help but think to myself, there have been so many times where I knew better but didn't do better. And I was tempted to stay stuck there. But much like Eve, I found the path forward. And so I wanted to rescue Eve and any other woman who has found herself stuck and show her that you can evolve from whatever it is that you've gone through. And so this book is that manual for women who may be feeling stuck or maybe trapped in their past. This is the guide that we're going to use to help move ourselves into who God has called us to be.
I love that, Sarah. And, I'm so happy that you talked about your connection with Eve because I do think many of us try to distance ourselves and would care not to admit that we can relate to the story of Eve in the Bible more than we would like to. When did you first feel a deeper connection and appreciation of the story of Eve?
I was at a women's conference, which I get to speak at these different women's conferences. And this one in particular, they had on t-shirts and it said like Sarah, Ruth, Esther, Mary, squad goals. And I'm still a little petty, like God is still working on delivering my petty. And I was like, I know why they don't have Eve on that shirt because homegirl messed it up for everyone. And then God was like, first of all, you need to focus on what you're supposed to be doing in this moment. And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't be feeling that badly about her. And then I just started this journey of seeing her differently. But it all started with these shirts where no one wanted Eve on their squad. And I thought, what would it look like if Eve was on my squad? Who would I have to become? And the truth is, I would have to become someone who embraced people who had had mistakes, including myself. And so a deeper level of self-love and self-awareness came from that revelation.
Mm, that is deep. And I heard that you said it before. When it comes to Eve, she's somebody who knew better, but did not do better. And you
Yeah.
feel like that applies to your life. How so?
I mean, if from anything from eating French fries to being unforgiving to having low self esteem in moments, there are moments where we all, I think, can relate to knowing better, but not doing better, calling that toxic person, watching something that we know always makes us feel badly, spending too much time on social media. And so I think that it's tempting to see someone else's downfall and to think to ourselves, I would never let that happen. But the more compassionate and empathetic way forward is to say, I could see how that could happen. And I think that it makes us better as humans and better as women in particular when we can see another woman's scars and say, I may not be bleeding there, but I'm bleeding here. But the truth is, at the end of the day, I want to heal so we can all move forward.
And speaking of healing and moving forward, that's another theme of your book is evolution, evolving. Why is it so important for, us as people to evolve?
Man, our bodies physically and biologically are evidence that we don't stay the same. And yet we experience traumas, disappointments, letdowns that force us into staying trapped in this same way of thinking and existing and living. We think to ourselves, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to do that again. Not knowing that when we make those lists of nevers, that what we're really saying is, I'm going to stay right here. And so, Woman Evolve is really a command to say, and evolve, that word means to gradually move. So it doesn't have to be overnight, but to make a decision that even if I have to take baby steps, I want to come out of this. I want to come out of this way of thinking. I want to come out of this way of existing. And I want to see what joy, what purpose, what strategy, what creativity exists on the other side of stuff.
Mm. And speaking of that, I also saw you put this up in a post about how 2020 was very difficult for you, as was for most of society, and it forced a lot of us to evolve, to
Yeah.
adjust to what is now the new norm. I wanted to really ask you to talk about how you evolved just over the past year because of the difficulties of 2020.
Man, as a leader, especially with the Woman Evolved movement, so much of what we did was event focused. We wanted to get people in a room and create an environment of transformation. Well, obviously, with the pandemic, all of that shifted. And as a leader, I was afraid. I had figured out a secret sauce for one part of my leadership, but I wasn't sure that it could translate into this new norm. And so I resisted it for a long time and thought, well, if we can't do it, then I'll postpone it to next year. But what if next year isn't open? I started asking myself. And so, what I had to learn, and what I think all of us have to learn, is that sometimes we focus so much on existing in the new norm that we don't become the person who we have to be in order to handle the new norm that is in front of us. And by becoming that person, that means accepting where we are, believing that this is still a place of faith, believing that this is still a place of creativity and strategy. And when we begin to embrace that and accept that, what I learned in 2020 is that we can do virtual events, we can do courses. There are so many different ways that we can connect with the people who are connected to our movement that doesn't have to be like what I saw yesterday. So I would just say the strategy for the new norm is in you embracing that you were built for this time did not take God by surprise. He knew you'd be alive. He knew you'd be in this moment. And so, God, bring me into that place of awareness and creativity that allows me to navigate the new that is ahead of me.
So prolific. I feel like you were on a stage just preaching a word right now. Thank you so much for those words that you just shared, Sarah. And speaking of talking and preaching, one thing that you've been very vocal about is the fact that you were a teen mom. You
Yeah.
had your first child at 14, and then you went through a very difficult and public divorce from your first marriage.
Yeah.
And you speak a lot about being depressed and being in toxic relationships, rebellion, all of these themes, right?
Yeah.
Where is it that you really found inspiration and motivation to turn those past traumas and pain into purpose to become the woman you are now as a leader? You have a ministry, you have a podcast, you have a fashion line, you have the Woman Evolve movement. So where did that inspiration and motivation really come from?
After I had my son, and even in the process of going through toxic relationships, I had this mindset that, like, I want better than this. I want better than this. I want better than this. And so all of my decisions were really made from a place of desperation, thinking that I need better than this so that I can prove everyone wrong or prove that this won't define me forever. And as long as I lived in that place of desperation, I ended up in desperate situations. It wasn't until I came to a place where I said, I can do better than this. I can do better than this relationship. I can do better than the way that I am thinking. And receiving that as my truth is really what was my turning point. And, it was a dramatic turning point, probably something worthy of a Lifetime movie. But I was literally talking to a police officer after just going off in my previous relationship. And I just was like, do you want to be the girl who's sitting at CPS because you couldn't control your anger? Or do you think that you can really become better than this? And so through humility, I packed my babies up. I went home with my parents and I started over because I started believing that I can do better and I can unlock the next step. And now I'm still living in the I can do this book. I can have these conversations. I can have these events. And each time I take a step, God blesses that step and then tells me how to move in the next direction.
Thank you for sharing that. Where do you get your inspiration for your messages and the sermons that you deliver?
It's got to be real for me. I pray. I pray about wherever I'm speaking, but specifically about that space and that place. Not just like, God, I'm speaking today, give me something to say, but God, I'm going to Dallas. God, I'm preaching in LA. Like, what is it that you want the people connected to this message to hear? And whenever God gives me something that I think He's trying to, like, say to people about faith or purpose or, obedience, I first ask, how does it apply to me? Because if it's not real for me, I can't push you something that I don't believe in. So, how has God proven this in my own life? And when it connects to me, when it challenges me, when it convicts me, then I begin to study so that I can see how I can grow in that area. So, what you all see when I'm speaking is the byproduct of my own relationship with God being put on display as He reveals to me what He needs to do in me. And it's just, a cherry on top that it happens to touch and motivate other people.
For sure. And
Yeah.
speaking of touching and motivating other people and, the message that you cultivate for different audiences, what message do you want readers of the book
Mm.
to walk away with?
Man, I want people to walk away with the reality that revolutionizing your life is possible. A lot of times we just start thinking that it's going to be the same old, same old day, same old life, same old purpose, same old job. And I have learned, I'm literally a living witness that that same old doesn't exist in God, that His faithfulness is the same, that His vision for our lives is always growing, always evolving, going from glory to glory. Now, in order to manifest that, we got to shed some skin. We got to confront some paradigms. We got to be willing to shake up our world. But it is such a beautiful journey. And so, my prayer is that people, when they read this book, will come to a place where they understand the revolution is closer than you think. Change is around the corner, but you have to be the person who takes ownership of your space in the world and then allow God to direct you to His next for your life.
Absolutely. And also take accountability. One of the first
Yes.
steps in change is identifying the root, causes of your trauma, taking
Yeah.
accountability and then changing, which is something that you've demonstrated on a public forum really well. I did want to just switch gears a little bit to just talk about more of the church, the Black church and Black
Yeah.
millennials,
Yeah.
because it does, studies say that more so than any other time period, young people and millennials are leaving the church. And
Yeah.
you, as a millennial pastor, and such a great example of combining what it means to be in like faith and fashion in different industries. I wanted to ask your opinion about why you think so many of us, people our age, are
Yeah.
leaving the church.
Man, I think that so many people our age are leaving the church because at the end of the day, people want something real. They don't want to just be told what to do. They want to be told why they should do it. And in the why, then how do I do it? And why should I do this in the first place? And so I think it makes perfect sense when we have Google at our fingertips where we can get information so quickly, to think that there are some places in the Black church where your information has a limit. And I think we're such a curious generation that that doesn't work for us. But I will say that I think that the fact that I have been able to touch as many people that I've touched. My husband and I have a thriving church that is mainly this demographic that people say are leaving the church, is a sign that if we're willing to bear our scars, if we're willing to be honest, if we're willing to get off of our high horses and to say, listen, this is what I went through, this is what I'm trying to save you from, that there is a space for us to still have faith as Black millennials, but it has to be real. It can't be gimmicky. And I think what's from the heart ends up touching the heart. I have this social media following that is like crazy, but I think it's because I don't mind telling you that I got pregnant at 14, that I went through a divorce, that I almost got arrested. And I think that when I trust that you've been through something, then I can trust that you can take me somewhere too. And I think that that's a missed opportunity, but I think it's coming back around and we're going to see a shift.
Well, I hope so. I
Yeah.
definitely hope so. And, I'm so happy again to have someone like you in place and seeing God use you to reach this demographic in particular. I don't know where I would be without my faith. So I encourage as
Yeah.
much people as I can to, get in touch with their spiritual side, with faith and with God. On that note, Sarah, we do have to close out, but once again, please let us know how we can purchase Woman Evolve and what to expect when we read your book.
Woman Evolve is out April 6th, wherever books are sold, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, indie retailers. And this is the book that is going to guide you from where you are now, limited in whatever area that may be, relationally, even spiritually, and help you to really take the limits off so that you can experience a new version of you. At the end of the day, I feel like this book is going to be a mirror that says, this is where you are, but also let me show you the flip side of the mirror that magnifies who you are in God. And so prepare to be seen, prepare to be heard, and prepare to be revolutionized.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you.